So, hi everybody, I'm Nick Seamus with Netwoven. Some of you here at least know me, and definitely excited to get back in the Portland Azure user group. It's been some time, but I did want to thank Joe and Greg and all the others for the invite and all the hard work so far. Just quick background on us, and I think, Steve, you have some slides, a slide or two we can throw up here. So, just kind of high-level view, we were founded in 2001 by several Microsoft executives from the SharePoint team. We have employees and customers all over the world. I'm here in Portland and have been for 20 years, as are several of our customers. We're a Microsoft Managed Partner, and we help customers leverage their investments in the 3 Microsoft clouds. So that's being M365, which we're talking about today, / Office 365, Dynamics 365, and Azure. As it turns out, cloud security and client compliance is our fastest growing practice area, which unfortunately is not surprising in a world where the quantity and sophistication of cyber threats continues to grow quarter over quarter, and that trend seems to be continuing. Steve, yeah, there we go. And then maybe you can move on to the next one as well.
Sure, of course, sorry.
Quite right. Yeah, so here's some customers that we've worked with currently in the past as well. So my colleague and esteemed presenter today, Steve Andrews, will share my contact info at the end of the deck, like I mentioned. And please do reach out to Steve or I if you'd like to chat about some of our work or about M365 security or the security landscape in general. So thanks again.
Thank you, Nick, and really appreciate you finding time to make this happen. So I think with that, I'm going to turn it over to Steve.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Okay. Oh, no. So anyway, thanks for having us. It's definitely, as Nick says, it's like crazy growing business and also crazy the pace of change, even though cloud is already very high. This is even more now the icing on the cake of code change and development. So I'm going to talk about really sort of the issues and the challenges facing information protection in our organizations. So this is sort of put together from out in the field of what we see and deal with every day. Talk about Microsoft Information Protection, and it's one of those areas that they keep rebranding, so it keeps changing names. Talk about what it can do for you and its capabilities. Go through some of the best practices when it comes to the methodologies, talk a little bit about Windows Information Protection, and also look at how it operates on non-Microsoft platforms, such as Mac and Android, etc. there. Talk about Adobe as one of the third parties that is easily connected in with information protection from Microsoft, because they've done a complete 360 in the recent years, I guess, since the new leadership took over, when it comes to being not so inward bound. They've really opened up to all the third parties, and especially with security, where it's all about the different security vendors getting together and exchanging information to better the world as a whole, if you like. Then looking at sort of reporting and how we can keep an eye on it and get some analytics out of it as well. And a bit of Q&A at the end, but do feel free to ask questions throughout, and we will get to them at the end. All right, so as I mentioned, it's really, let's start up by talking about what Nick and I see in the field. And really, the change in this climate for this, because I mean, it used to be, spotty teenagers in a basement. What was the film? War Games, or the other one with the net or something. So, and it's a lot more sophisticated now. Of course, you've got organized crime, you've got nationalist groups, all sorts of people, and then of course on top of that you've got AI, and so Microsoft is totally aware of that and is leveraging AI against AI in a lot of cases. So it's no longer single people on the keyboards doing the mayhem. So a bit of background, let's think about where our information and data is. I mean, pretty much every organization, I call it's called the digital estate, right? Which is the term used for all of your corporate data, wherever it is stored. And of course, this can be across tons of different platforms and services. And of course, a lot of those are non-Microsoft. And so really, these are accessed by your colleagues or your users from anywhere on any device at any time. Okay, so that's what's got to be kept in mind, that complete and easy accessibility to keep up the productivity of the teams and the organization itself. And of course, the recent pandemic has really, really accelerated this, especially with the companies that were very adverse to telecommuting with the staff. It's going to be interesting to see what happens in the commercial real estate world. So it's really pushed both collaboration to the forefront and security to the forefront, because you've all probably seen mainstream news talk about security issues with Zoom, for example, or other platforms. And this is one where Microsoft really does excel, to be honest, with their Teams product. And that's still in its infancy. It's just growing every day. So what we've got here, some of the common ones is here. Customers say their data is all over the place and it's growing at a crazy pace. So therefore, they can't apply any sort of unified policies because it's such a spread across various data sources. It's not just in one specific place or one repository. So how then do you protect this data? I mean, because it's all over the place. And so everybody wants to have a complete coverage, right? They want to have an end-to-end. And really, Microsoft is the only vendor that can do that. And I mean, yes, they're new to security, but really, things like rights management and information protection, they've been doing for quite some time, in the on-premise world. So a lot of these products are mature, which is great because you know what you're getting. And then they've added to that just an absolute plethora of other security products to enable that end-to-end facility, and also to completely cover those documents or information wherever it is. And so, for example, I was at a one of the big law firms a couple of weeks ago, and they had a new CIO. So, and this gentleman said in this sort of inaugural meeting, what did he say? He says, I don't care about the users. I just want to have all the security enabled. And I was thinking to myself, well, he's probably not going to last very long, because one thing about human nature is if we put up, restrictions or barriers, we'll find a way around it. And you'll see that in TMZ or the news when you look at some of the monitors in the background with Post-it notes on with the passwords, or when they're on camera and they're putting in the password to the phone. So people will find a way around it if you do make things too complicated, and their productivity will be interrupted. So we'll get to that as well. So another one is about governance, because really it goes hand in hand with security, because it's sort of it really is a bit of almost a byproduct at the beginning, because the security systems do such rich and deep reporting and analysis and monitoring that often they've done most of the compliance requirements for you. And so they've been building on that to cover for, as many of the compliances out there that are available. And if you think about Microsoft being in pretty much every country, every market around the world, they have to cover a lot of different compliances from various sources. And really, if you tried to do that yourself, it would be, I think, impossible, or you'd have to have a crazy unlimited budget to do it yourself. Then my next point is, back to that CIO mentioning about he wanted all the security enabled. So if for the business's health and perspective, people, its users and its user base need to be able to be productive all the time. So they can't have these sort of frustrated disruptions or trying to figure out what sort of security warning is going on or stopping them from doing. It has to make them be even more productive so that they're not aware if it's there a lot of the time. And then the last one here is a classic as well, is complaints about they can't find the data or where it is. And of course, if you're spread across all these different platforms and cloud services, that is an issue. So we're going to talk about a lot of these as we go through this hour. So starting off with Microsoft Information Protection. So this is an umbrella, right? There's there's quite a lot of products underneath it. And again, because each product does a different task or a different role to do with security, or it's covering a different type of data or content. And so altogether, they give you that end to end. And so it's all about keeping the security that you require in that document or data wherever it is. For example, if you think back, oh gosh, maybe 10-ish years when you had, Exchange Active Sync on premise, and if an employee left their phone on a bus or a train, or they had it stolen, you could go ahead and send out basically a factory reset wipe, which would just have the phone go back to factory standards, but of course it's erasing everything on it. And a lot of times that's a problem when it comes to, I've got my wedding photos on the phone or baby photos. I've heard it all with that. And, they didn't realize that when they were using that phone with the work systems that, when they either leave or they've lost it or it's found again, then everything is going to be wiped on it back to default. So that's an important thing to think about, and we'll get to that as well. So it's all about discovering the data. Where is it? And then, of course, once we've discovered it, we've got our classification rules and policies, so we can go ahead and stamp that on. And that, of course, is then going to give us that level of protection that we require. And also want to keep an eye on it and look at the wonderful reports and drill downs that Microsoft is really, really strong at when it comes to administering and reporting on it. Okay, and of course, this is not just cloud, right? So we're talking about hybrid and on-premise as well. It's got to be able to cover everything, every eventuality of technology a company has. So I grabbed this little visual here. I still love this. This just shows you, and this is not all of the products underneath Microsoft Information Protection. This is just some of them. But these are some of the big ones, from Cloud App Security, which is one of the newer ones, through to, message encryption, which has been around for a while. New as well, Windows Information Protection. We'll get to that. But you can see there's like an awful lot of moving parts to do this Discover, Classify, Protect, and Monitor. Okay. So really, and again, I think it was the same CIO when we were chatting. When you think about sort of traditional, or I'm going to call it legacy security systems, they're really sort of siloed and in absolute separation. And so I've been in organizations where they proudly boast, oh, we've got 30 or 40 different security products or systems. We must be in good hands, and it's actually pretty much detrimental if you think about it. So not to be fear-mongering, but it's not a case of if you get breached, it's a case of when. So it will happen. We're always trying to stay a step behind, if you like, the bad actors, and that is a constant challenge. So the good organizations will be the ones that can get out of it or get through it as quickly as possible. So it's all about the remediation, because you will get breached. It'll be in some form or whatever. And of course, it's happening at a crazy amount per day. I was doing a security chat with the FBI at another event, and we were having a great chat. And he was saying to me, the average, if you watch the news at night and you see all the car chases or the bank robberies and stuff, the average amount that they get, first of all, they don't get away, because you have motorcyclists, police bikes, helicopters, everything. They never get away. And they never have more than 5 or 10,000, because all the banks are smart about keeping as little money in their branches as possible. And so to give you some perspective, so they less than 10,000, they never get away with it. Now, if we talk about cybercrime, the average dollar amount is $150,000, and they get away with it most of the time, because there's not enough, when you're talking about from a law enforcement perspective, there's not enough manpower to go after each one, or they're too fast and savvy to be caught, in a sense. So it's back to the point, it's all about the remediation. So, when we've got all these, if you think about, again, the siloed security systems, you want to have everything under one administrative roof, if you like, or one administrative panel, because you want to be able to see your whole organization, really. You want to look at your digital estate and see what security stance your organization is at, not go to 30 or 40 different security products and try and figure it out from there. But you want to see it in one place. All right, so Now, as I mentioned like a little bit ago, data protection and governance really do go hand in hand. And thinking back a while, it really was like a sort of a side effect, if you like, about the governance because of the security tools being so good that they were able to fulfill a lot of the compliance requirements out of the gate, so to speak. So, this sort of discover, classify, and labelings are put together because they are sort of, it's a logical thing. So we're able to give you like a streamlined or unified approach rather to these three areas, and they are pulled in together. So once we've got our discovery and we've classified, we've labeled, we can then, you can automatically apply the labeling, or it can be applied manually. And again, this is dependent on your situation, or it can be dependent on licensing as well. But yeah, so after the discovery, it's then down to the labeling and it being applied correctly. And of course, ideally you want it to be automatic because you want to remove the human error element of it. And of course, really, when it comes to sort of monitoring and reporting, you want it to be as proactive as possible because you want to find holes and risks before somebody else does, and give you, again, rich detail about all the different locations, be it physical locations or platforms. You want to see it all in one place, right? So, and again, Microsoft is phenomenal at this with their, from Power BI through just general UI. It's super fast for someone who, let's say from an administrative side, is already in Office 365, for example, or M365, because it's very familiar the way they build the navigation and the look and feel. So it's a really fast ramp up time. Whereas with again, a third party security product, you've got to learn the way they do things. So it's a real good advantage. And of course, because of that, it's so easy to pick up. You've got wonderfully rich drill down reporting. So you can like see exactly what is going on. And let's say, I was at a site the other day and they had a breach. Actually, we just put the systems in and they were watching a breach happen through a phishing email. And so on the administrative display, it shows how it came in. It shows who opened it or clicked it, or because this was a brand new phishing attempt in a sense, so it wasn't actually reported yet. And then we saw it go through on the chart, which machines it touched. And then we were able to isolate it. And then because of that data and knowing what it had done, we can go back and patch and clean up after it. And so again, it's all about the remediation. Right, so in the past, and this is again, just talking about Microsoft, not perfect, of course. So in the past, they had a bit of a silo situation themselves. So we had protection for Office 365, and that meant, emails or documents, and that could be, of course, from Exchange Online or SharePoint. And really, there was separate consoles for it. You had even separate products to do with Office 365, to do with the different applications and services. So again, a little bit siloed there, which is not great. The same with information protection for Windows as well. It was, again, siloed, and it was just to cover the sort of, for want of a better term, the last mile, if you like. So your actual desktops. And also, again, with the endpoints or mobile devices, Intune, that was all separate and in different administrative states and formats. And then we had, of course, Azure Information Protection, again, siloed at that point. You had its own portal, its own management, it had its own labeling type systems. And so it was really a little bit silly. So they worked very hard to replace this and give it all a consistency. Meaning, if I'm configuring, if I'm setting up my content detections or what I would like it to look for, what it should be labeling a certain way, we just have to do that once. And it's going to travel across any of the, in this example here, any of these three services. So again, do it one time. And the same thing, when it comes to the applications that it's applicable to, do it once. And so then everything is viewed and administered through the Microsoft 365 Security and Compliance Center. And this, is a little frustrating, keeps going through multiple brandings and different areas. It keeps moving around like crazy. So that's my only critique or complaint about this. But they will get a handle on it, I'm sure. So this is a little bit more detail, meaning again, we're talking about the different products and technologies under Microsoft Security here. It's crazy. You've got what, 112 here, and there are more as well from this. I just picked some of the big ones, and so you can really see. And I think it's they invest. It's either $2 billion a year, I think it is, in the security area of Microsoft. So they're super serious about it. You know, to the point of was it the red team and the blue team is two permanent teams at Microsoft. Where the red team is constantly trying to, and succeeding sometimes, break Azure. And of course, everything is built from Azure, be it Office 365 or whatever. So they're constantly trying to hack it. And then the blue team is constantly trying to either, you know, patch stop them or do a super fast remediation. So it's this constant competition. It's very fascinating to watch, actually. They take it very seriously. So, all right. Let's get into the weeds a little bit here. So we're going to have a look at the three unified areas about our discovery and classification and how to protect. So let's move on. Let's have a look at discovery first of all. So it really doesn't, you know, it's so important that it doesn't matter who or where it's created. It doesn't matter if it's who, again, or where it's modified, or if it's shared out. So again, if we go back to thinking about, you know, the 10 years ago where you had your cell phone and you've left it on a bus or a train, and you need, you know, you call it IT to have it wiped. So you could, if you have the properly deployed Microsoft Information Protection, it wouldn't matter. And by that, I mean, if any attachments on it or files that are classified and have the correct label on them, even if you've lost that device, whoever gets it or even turns it on, they will not be able to open any of the sensitive information, because every time that information is accessed, it calls home. So it's going to check back, you know, with the Microsoft Cloud, if you like, and it's going to then say, okay, you holding this phone, you need to validate you need to validate that you are who you say you are. And you'll hear that a lot, especially when it comes to multi-factor authentication, which we'll chat about in a minute as well. So if I have this, you know, stolen phone, for example, and I try and open up one of the, let's say this is, you can see there's a couple of Excel files on it or something like that, it's then immediately going to prompt me to authenticate, because, you know, that's come from that labeling, the classification system there. And of course, I'm not going to know the user credentials, but not only the credentials, it's going to conditional access, and we'll talk about that as well. If the person logging into that phone or trying to get on that phone is exhibiting behavior that's sort of not how I would do it as the normal phone user, it's going to flag. And so it can say, okay, this looks pretty odd, so I'm going to send another multi-factor request. And of course, since I may not have that device on me, and it's really going to really probe you. And if you exhibit more bizarre behavior, for example, it can then temporarily suspend your account automatically for you. So that's where the sort of AI and the automation comes into it, which is so important with security. If you think of all of the, you know, Xbox, Hotmail, Azure, Office 365, all these different services Microsoft has, and it's billions and billions of logins constantly. The AI behind it knows what a good normal user interaction looks like. And if you think about the classic thing of when somebody is terminated, you know, or sorry, not terminated, they've given in their, say, 2 weeks notice, and they immediately start going and downloading, you know, plans or blueprints or other sensitive information that is not part of their job usually. Immediately that would be picked up because it's out of the normal behavior, and the systems are going to know that and stop that from happening. And that's the classic one when people leave and they want to take, you know, everything from the sales contact books with them to plans and blueprints. So let's see here. We've got, again, we've mentioned about that cloud app security. We've got mentioned, okay, I'll get through those in just 1 second here. So with the classification, it's so important to be consistent. And this is why Microsoft, again, is very strong at, because they get that classification across all of the services. You only have to do it once. And there's, again, no other vendor that can do that. But also, it needs to be really tightly integrated and natively. You know, you don't have to write custom code or connectors or pipes, you know, and have developers do it. It needs to work out of the box, and it needs to hook in with all the other systems as quickly and simply as possible. So when it comes to looking at the content, when it's scanning and it does deep scans, there are about, I think, almost 100 built-in sensitivity types that it can identify. And again, if you want to, you can customize and hook it into non-Microsoft. They've made it very, very easy to hook through third parties, and that's a two-way street. You know, a lot of people have, let's say, it could be Mimecast or one of the other products, and because all the security companies, including Microsoft, have got together and openly trade information, because it's wonderful because they're not looking out for themselves. You know, the sort of industries realize that they have to work together, because again, it's all about staying as close to that bad actor as possible. So it's really wonderful that they are embracing that too. All right, so let's have a look. We've got, of course, Office 365, we've got it all integrated tightly there. We've got our regular Office applications that we're all familiar with. And then if we've got some on-premises, and most people, to be honest, are really in hybrid mode with their cloud state. I'm noticing it's just really some of the tech startups that can go pure cloud because they've, you know, come from starting at zero. So on-premise, there's a piece of the puzzle called Azure Information Protection Scanner. And what this does, this is an on-premise basically service. It's like almost like a search engine crawler that you point to your legacy, you know, file shares and NAS devices, and it will go through and scan all of the documents and information in there, looking for, you know, the classification materials that you've specified. And again, this runs on a schedule, and so that's tying in all of the legacy things on-premise. So when we talk about in the cloud, as one of the products here, we've got the Cloud App Security. And this product is absolutely phenomenal because it hooks into so much non-Microsoft that it's just wonderful. And the classic case, and you pretty much see this everywhere, as I'm sure as I have, let's say you're in an organization, you're in your client, and they have, let's say the legal department, that's a classic one. The legal department has, you know, outsourced counsel, and that law firm will only use, let's say, Box, if, for example, to transfer files. They don't have OneDrive or want to use OneDrive, and so this Cloud App Security is able to control and manage non-Microsoft storage products, and it does this really, really well. So you don't have to. Back in the old days, you had to have everything Microsoft if you wanted all the bells and whistles. It's not the case anymore. So it all ties in, even to you know, Google with G Suite. The logins work as well for that. So it's really wonderful to see how they're working with the customer or with the sort of use cases or personas that organizations have. And another classic one is sort of branding or graphics. Again, that usually have an outsourced. Depending on the size of the company, of course, an outsourced graphic service, and they'll only use, you know, product X to move files, for example. So it can, again, tie in with there. Let's have a look. So again, still looking at the labeling. Now, I grabbed this screenshot here just to show you how slick and straightforward the user interfaces are. So here, it's all about centralization. We can go ahead and administer everything in one place. All the classifications are unified and it's all consistent, and the experience is consistent. So it's, again, a really short ramp up from an admin side. So again, we can do everything we want from this security and compliance center here. And again, one place. Okay, that's a really important thing. You're not going to 20, 30 different security products to configure or to see what's going on. So now when it comes to sort of specialized workspaces, excuse me, here we've got two distinct areas separated out from an admin side, and this is because there's all, as you may well know, with Azure and role-based access controls. A lot of large organizations will have, let's say, for example, an InfoSec or security department, so they will have allowed access to the security center that we've got on the left here. And then a lot of large organizations have a separate compliance team. And again, so with the roles-based, we can lock them down to just the compliance administration if we need to. And so again, this is a great bonus when you're dealing with large organizations. So let me think, let's see if I missed anything on this. Really, yeah, so the security center is very specialized in the sense of it's a centralized hub, and it really leverages all of the Microsoft 365 security solutions, from identity to access management, sort of traditional when it comes to threat protection and information protection and security management. So it's all in one place here. So flip that coin, and then the compliance area, or compliance center rather, again, it's specialized just for compliance teams and folks. So it's looking at privacy and risk, let's say with risk management professionals, for example, so they can access their compliance risks through this manager and then really know and be able to protect and govern the data with the sensitivity and retention labels that are relevant to them. And so this is important, of course, when it comes to regulatory requests like data subject requests. And they're able to get to that easily, and they're not stepping into other areas that they shouldn't be. So let's talk about labeling for a second. Now, I have purposely started off with non-Microsoft when it comes to the end user or client. So for example, now with the native labeling, it's actually built into the Office platform. So again, most of the time, you don't have to have any other installs from a client perspective. And as you can see here, this is on a Mac, and they're working in Office for Mac. And you can see in the top right here, we've got the drop down of the labels. These are the ones that we've got set up for this particular organization. Public being the least protected, if you like, all the way through to the highest, and the most protection is the highly confidential. So here we can again select the label that we want. And it's built in, so there's no running around clients. And it's super intuitive, because if you see that and you don't know what it is in Word, you just press on it and it gives you, as well as the icon with the label, it lets you know what it's doing. So huge and really sort of broad and wide, if you like, platform support for Mac. Not just them, of course, not just OS X, iOS as well, and Android also. So here, let's have a look now. We've got grabbing one here. So you can see this is sort of the ribbon bar at the top here, and you see in red. So once we've selected the label, the configuration of that label is to watermark, as you can see it's done here. So it's put on the highly confidential stamp behind and the watermark. And then it's also putting in a sort of ribbon bar at the top here to let people know that this is sensitive data. And it's really, with these products, it's important to know it's as much about change management as it is about the technology and training, because ultimately, the employee could be the weakest link in the sense of if you have a label that needs to be set manually, and people aren't really educated or informed on what they're doing and how they're doing it, and they're responsible, and sort of the link of the chain falls apart. So let's have a look now on another situation. So here, what I've tried to do is if I'm open to a document with the label is set already, and I think it's not correct, it should be either higher label or lower label when it comes to the security level, you can go ahead and try and change it. And again, this is all policies set for the organization. Some organizations will let you change it because that's what they want. Others will not. So this one here is allowing us to change it. But what it does behind the scenes is it goes to do, a classic workflow, let's say to my manager or the InfoSec team, for example, because then I've got to put in a reason here why I think this is not right, and they'll go ahead and approve or deny it. Okay, so it's a great thing as well to have the level of comfort there. So here we are with Excel, the same thing. You've got your drop down in the top right. It's super intuitive, nothing odd about that. And again, with Excel, we've applied the same label, and it's given us, because I don't really have watermarks in Excel, but it's given us the ribbon bar at the top warning us about the label and the content of this document. So we're still in looking at Macs here. Now, of course, email is going to be one of the biggest ones to use. So you have the email, you have the sort of message body, but then also you'll have attachments a lot of times. So here, we're writing this email, and we're going to select the confidential label. Now, if the attachment, which let's say a Word document, has a higher label than the one of the email body, it always defaults to the higher label when it comes to the security. So it's a good thing to think about there. Let's see now. Whoops. Next here. So again, now you can see on the receiving end. So in the message preview on the right here, you can see the ribbon bar here. This has got a public label on it, and even a helpful button where you can click to learn more about that particular label and what it will and will not do. So very, very straightforward. Okay, and here the next one. Now, so excuse me. This is now looking on iPhone. So we're in iOS. Same sort of thing. We're in Word. The menu is exactly the same. Again, so people usually move from many different devices, either over the course of time, or they have several different ones at home, for example. So here again, it's all consistent, and this is on an iPhone. It's put the watermark in, and it's got the ribbon at the top. And again, now, of course, PowerPoint as well. So that is able to, again, do our watermarks and apply the labels in the exact same way. So it's very straightforward. Now here, I grab these. So you can see here, this is again is on iPhone. So here we're actually going to go on the left, we're creating the message, we're adding the label, and it's again coming from the drop-down menu. And you can see on the right when we're done, it's applied. And you can see you've got the top secret here, for example, in this one. Super straightforward, right? Learning curve is very, very short. Now, Android for a minute. Again, Word and Android, same drop down. It's doing exactly the same task of putting the watermark in and the ribbon at the top. And in the same way, if we want to go ahead and change the label because we don't think it's right, it's going to do the same menu. So people, again, are not scratching their heads trying to figure it out. It's very straightforward. And then let's have a look at Windows. Of course, exactly the same. We've got the button built in, and it's only the button is only active when you've sort of deployed the information protection system. So if you haven't deployed it, you won't see the button, and then it will come up after that deployment. And of course, Windows again with our Excel, super straightforward, all the same. So we had a quick look there at some of the clients and how they behave on different platforms. So what about in SharePoint itself or SharePoint Online? So here, we're going to go ahead and we're creating a site in this example I've grabbed here. So we're creating the site, and because it's a new site and we've got information protection running, you see it's got the sensitivity here. It's asking us for this site, what label do you want to apply? Now, the great thing about this is if you have a label set on a repository like SharePoint, or it could be a document library, anything put in there will automatically inherit or automatically take that label. Excuse me. So again, this is again removing as much human error as possible. So if you're storing, let's say you've got a HR portal or an accounting and finance portal, for example, those ones are usually have areas, or if not the whole site is locked down. And so that any documents in that repository is automatically covered. So you don't have any manual labeling process. A little bit like what I showed you in the Office applications. That was a manual process of setting the label. And there's also the automated ones too. But if you set the repository, you just set it and forget it, so to speak. So here we are. And again, it's given a warning bar at the top of the site. Again, this one's set to not allow people to download, they can't print, or they can't also synchronize the data with another device either. So again, friendly warning, no mystery with that. So again, let's have a look here. So this is a screen grab I grabbed of a site. As you can see, there's a couple of folders or documents in here, and you can see the first one is got the employee file label on it, right? None of the others have. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and apply the label rule to that document library, okay? So we've gone back into the settings in SharePoint, and you can see here, grabbing it there, applying the label. And again, it's going to give details. It's going to show us the labels that are available to us, and then going to go ahead and apply to that library. So when we then, after we've applied the label, and we'll go back to the site, you can see automatically all the other documents have inherited that label. So again, that's the automated side of it. And again, you don't have to worry. All right, so that's SharePoint. Now let's have a look at the next area that we're going to pick, which is Windows Information Protection. This one is one of the newer ones because this is actually built into one of the newer versions or later versions rather of Windows 10. And the way I like to think about it is if you're familiar with when it comes to like endpoints or mobile devices, and you've got two distinct behaviors, if you like. You've got MDM, which is mobile device management. And that term is not just Microsoft, of course, this is across AirWatch and MobileIron and the rest. So that's the sort of the oldest one, if you like. And what that does, it takes control of the whole phone. So it's a little bit like the example I was giving you at the beginning where I've lost my cell phone, and the admin team can then go ahead and do a factory wipe on it. That's all they can do. It's like all or nothing when it comes to resetting. Now, then the later or newer flavor, which can actually work hand in hand as well, it doesn't have to be two separate things, is MAM or Microsoft or mobile applications management. And this is a super effective way to surgically protect corporate data on a device that's not your own, meaning it's not corporate owned, so it's like BYOD. And in a sense, for sake of a visualization, it puts a bubble onto that device, or a container, if you want to call it like that. And then any corporate communications or any corporate data is kept inside that bubble, and it cannot pass. So it's a win-win on both sides. So it's a win from the IT side because they know the information is protected, and it's a win from ourselves, the end user, because we know that, again, my personal stuff is going to be kept separate and it's not going to mesh. And if they do, let's say if they do want to, let's say, terminate my phone, it will just pull back that surgical container and leave the phone exactly as it is. So that little bit of background is exactly how WIP or Windows Information Protection works on Windows 10. So when you've got a Windows 10 machine at home, that's a sort of bring your own device, BYOD, or if you're on the road, anything like that, it's going to operate in the same manner. So it's going to protect the files based on the labels. It's going to do its best to prevent data from being accidentally copied. And I mean, this is an important one because, especially when we're working at home, if you've got constant interruptions and you're in the middle of working on an important document, and let's say you copied a section to put somewhere else, but you got interrupted and it ends up pasting into a personal thing. So this one is going to help you not to do that, basically. So, and yeah, version 1809. So that's not too brand new, but that's to be aware that it works on that one version onwards. So here, and I grabbed these little screenshots here. You can see in the example I was just talking about where I'd highlighted an area of the document and copied it, and accidentally, because I was distracted, tried to paste it into Twitter or somewhere else. Here, immediately it says, "Are you sure?" Because this doesn't look right. It's saying, "Are you sure you want to paste that work content here?" So it's warning you in this case because it's a BYOD device, and they find the most issues with personal devices when it comes to computers is accidental pasting or moving data somewhere where it shouldn't be. So let's see here. And the same way, if we're thinking about a confidential file, right? We're in OneDrive, and of course, you have OneDrive personal, you have OneDrive for business as well. So here, I was trying to, again, accidentally copy a corporate file to my personal OneDrive, and immediately it's going to say, nope, the rules of your organization is not going to let you do that. Okay, so it's giving them a warning straight away. So that's covering from the OneDrive. Now, if we try with a highly, top level or highly confidential file, in this case, I want to do, again, accidentally, I had Gmail open on another window, and I was creating a message there, and I copied and pasted, but I didn't realize what I was copying and pasting. So here again, it's warning that it knows it's Gmail, it knows it's not a Microsoft or it's not your corporate systems, and it's going to, again, stop you from doing that. So, and again, when it comes to copying files, so here, in this example, I was trying to copy, again, a corporate document to like either a USB or thumb drive or some other drive on the machine to basically take it away. And here, again, it's picked that up, and it's saying it's not allowing you to move this sort of highly confidential protected content to, you know, to a non-approved repository or non-approved device. Okay. So that gives you a little bit about Windows Information Protection. That is one of the newer ones. I have a few customers running it, and quite successfully, I have to say, because you know they're trying to embrace the whole BYOD, especially with the newer companies doing that. So switching gears for a minute to the Information Protection Scanner, which I mentioned at the beginning, which is really designed for on-premise and legacy file systems and storage solutions. So this works in two ways. You can do it just to scan, which most we recommend as well. Most customers use to figure out what they've got, because every organization you go to, there's either racks of servers if they've got some on-premise that people don't know what they're doing, if anything, or just data. So you can have the Information Protection Scanner go out and scan, not make any changes or anything, and just go through all of the information and report back to you. And it can run for a while, depends on how much stuff you've got, really. I mean, people have an awful lot if they're not doing their correct retention systems. So that's a discover mode, and that's going to, again, tell you where all your sensitive data is. Now, again, you can use the enforcement on it to automatically do it. So when it finds, let's say, a document containing sensitive data, it's automatically going to go ahead and put the correct, excuse me, classification and labels and everything that your organization has specified on it. So that's a wonderful way of doing it. So if you are using both Discover and Enforce together, you can set, because the scanner is really like a crawl engine, and so it behaves like that. So we have it run, let's say once a day, for example, at night, to see if any new documents are put in the repository and to pick that up, and then of course automatically classify them there. So again, you don't have to worry about it. So mentioned about that as the scanner just doing the discovery. Here's a screen grab I got, and you can see this is again so clean and beautiful when it comes to the UI, and it's all drill downable. So you've got in the middle here, it's super fast for you to ramp up. I mean, it's just it's really intuitive. So if I want, I can go ahead and click down through these, and it's going to go ahead and below build up what I'm drilling down on. So you can go ahead and, let's say, here in this example, the labels that have been used are, let's see, with phone number. You can see here phone numbers or social security, and that's governed by the yellow here, and that's the one that's found the most in this case. So super slick and super easy to do. Okay, let's see. And of course, I mentioned drilling down here. I just click through on one of those items, and again, it's giving you this crazy richness below. It's telling you exactly where the file is, the namings, all the information about it, if it's protected, and what it's flagged up in there, what it's found. So for example, it's found, credit card numbers here, and again, depending on what it's picked up. All right, so I know I mentioned about cloud app security just earlier on. And the examples I was chatting about was, if you have an organization that has outsourced legal counsel, for example, or graphics departments, and those organizations which you do sort of B2B to have their own standards of when it comes to the utilities, products, and applications they use. So, and I mentioned earlier about the Box, for example, they don't want to use OneDrive, they use Box, that's totally fine. So the cloud app security can also help discover the data in these non-Microsoft platforms. And it's, of course, because you've got information everywhere, it really needs to happen. And so it's going to go ahead and search and inspect and look inside these files and apply the best policy or the most relevant policy to that. And again, excuse me, if this classification, it can be automatic as well. So again, set it, forget it, you don't have to worry. Because really, if you think about it, the whole shadow IT thing, which is basically where, in an example, let's say I'm in let's say customer service team at whatever the organization is, and I've requested, and either a number of times or there's a huge long wait for a particular service or account to be added so we can actually continue work. And if the delay or there's too many roadblocks, people just go and do it themselves, especially with sort of cloud services. It's super easy for, a non-technical person to go ahead and do that. So this really, the cloud app security is really there to address it. So in my screen grab here, I've got, was it Jennifer, I think I used here. Yeah, I used like a user account called Jennifer here. So Jennifer has a Box account, and you can see there's it's called confidential document here. Okay, so this is in Box. Now, using Microsoft Cloud App Security, it's actually traced that file, and you can see here we're in the organization's Cloud App Security administration, and it sees that document, knows who it is, and it knows what application it's on, and of course if there's been any collaborators with it, and what policy is applicable to it. And again, you see in the drill down below, it's got such rich information. Oh, excuse me. So and again, this is on a non-Microsoft platform. So it's wonderful. Right, so I know this is such a crazy amount to cover when it comes to Microsoft security. I'm just trying to get through some of the highlights here because you could probably talk for days. So let's have a look at, as I mentioned, Microsoft's really opened their arms to non-Microsoft when it comes to the, communications or product development, all sorts, especially with security. So a classic non-Microsoft is, we all use PDFs in Adobe. The native product from Adobe is able to know and deal with the labels just as a Word or Excel does. So it's wonderful that the experience is also built into that, and it's all native when it comes to the protection. And so it's really, no more you don't need any other third-party apps to worry about the labels. In this case, there are quite a few third-party vendors that are hooked in to the information protection. I mean, and then let's see, the classic one I see is probably CAD files, like AutoCAD files from, it could be from real estate, it could be from, factory design and planning, or all sorts. And then, of course, there's a rich third-party market that does build hook-ins for these possibly unwieldy, because AutoCAD files can get really huge, to these other products as well. So you certainly are not stuck down any alley, stuck down any dead end. There's a lot of options. All right, so we chatted about our discovery and our classification and our protection. So now let's have a look at our monitoring here. And that includes, of course, reporting and alerts. So the analytics that come out of information protection is like really comprehensive when it comes to, the processes we've talked about, our discovery, classification, and protection. It'll give us all the retention labels that that are in use. The analytics for existing scenarios of customers is covered with information protection, and also the analytics for sensitivity labels. So, M365 being, one of the newer offerings with Microsoft, they've really caught up as well. There's no lag between, a new product at Microsoft and the information protection being built into it. It actually has to come out with it all ready to go. So there's no delays. So let's grab here. Now, so when we looked at our label analytics here, again, in this UI, this is, quite a good example of this organization because they're pretty big. And, they've got well over 250,000 labels running on items. And as you can see here, the breakdown is from retention label, which, is basically means that whatever your compliance is, be it contracts or taxes, let's say with 7 years, the retention system, and again, depending on how your organization has it configured, will manage the life cycle of that data or document through to that 7 years. And then either, depending on how you've configured it, prompt you to say, okay, this batch is ready to be disposed. Is that okay? Or it can just automatically do it. Because I was actually at a client this morning who I've never come across this before. Their legal team want to keep everything forever. And I'm thinking to myself, that's usually the opposite thing a legal team does, because of course, the more you keep, the more you're liable. It's all about reducing your sort of footprint to being responsible. Because yeah, if they've got a lawsuit or some sort of e-discovery thing, and let's say it was from an incident 10 years ago, and you keep everything, they're going to go through it all, and it's going to be a nightmare. But if you had your 7-year, legal compliance in, it wouldn't be an issue, because it gets rid of it after 7 years. So that's a retention. Sensitivity, and that's of course all about the information itself being confidential or highly secret, and that's showing how many of those are in use. So you can see it's actually almost a balance in this case. And then it's showing us by location of where the items are stored, and it's showing SharePoint Exchange and other SaaS apps, and that could be Box or whatever else there. Now, also here, this is good information, because the label analytics, you actually use a heck of a lot at the beginning of a deployment, because it helps you fine tune and it helps you see the sort of trends of the organization. So in this case, financial is the biggest hog, if you like, of the labels, and no surprise there, HR as well, and legal, and then GDPR in this case as well. So that's retention. And then when it comes to the sensitivity, you've got sort of non-business, meaning that the lowest level in this organization's type, general, internal, and confidential, which is the highest. And you can see that actually it's quite a good ratio there. The highest label is not used as much as the others. That's good. So let's see. And of course, the people who are doing the labeling and what app or platform they're using. So it gives you the sort of top ones here. And over time as well, it's good to see the trends. So once you're past your deployments with it, this is pretty perfect here. You can see it gradually growing, of course, as your corporate data or digital estate grows. So let's have a look now at some of the analytics when it comes to the enhancements here. So this one really gives you fantastic insight into the files that have been already classified, labeled, and protected, and across what area or what sort of workloads they're on. So in this one here, you can see we've got by application. You can see Microsoft Word is the biggest one here, followed by the AIP scanner. So it's picking up legacy file shares and documents there. And then here you can see the types. So here it's the biggest one is picking up the phone number. So it's personal identifiable information. Credit cards, of course, that's no surprise there. And so it's breaking it all down. Again, you can drill down through this. So when it comes to the usage, let's grab this a second. Again, here, giving us the detail on how the labels are actually used and as the organization as a whole. So again, one-stop shop for all of this insight into across all of your services, and it really is phenomenal to be able to track and look at what your security posture is. Let's see. This one again is looking at it, but from a data level when it comes to the sensitivity of that data. And here you can see from a location types, the sort of legacy file shares high up on the list here with the number of files in being labeled as protected. And then endpoint, you've got here, these are like desktops and laptops for the organization. So again, you can drill through all of this super easily. All right, so to sum up on that, we've done a discovery, classify, and protect. We just had a look at our monitoring and reporting and alerting there. And of course, this is on any device. It doesn't matter what device it is, and it doesn't matter what application it is, and it doesn't matter what cloud service it's on. And it doesn't even matter if it's on legacy on-premise, it's going to cover it. And so that alone gives you tremendous confidence. So one of the things you may hear a lot of is about persistency or persistent protection. And that means, in the Microsoft security world, that the restrictions or metadata information is actually traveling with the document. So in a sense, it's wrapped in it like a bubble. So a Word document, again, like I was saying, if you lose your phone now or you've lost your laptop or somebody's stolen it, if there are sensitive documents on that are covered with your information protection, they're not going to be able to open them. And the encryption is so high on that, it would take an awful long time to break it. So here we're talking about, so persistent, sorry, to step back a second, the persistency is end to end. It means that wherever that file is, whatever it's on, doesn't matter, the rules are in the file itself. So we've got, starting off with our discovery here, we've got transportation rules in, say, an Exchange. We've got data loss prevention in SharePoint. So it's discovering items there. Endpoint, of course, we've got phones, desktops. We've got our file classifications. You've got information protection there and the cloud app security. So there's many different, if you like, products doing the discovery for the content. So then we're moving to our classification. So this is, again, you've got classification within Exchange itself, and of course, tagging within SharePoint to do those labels, and Azure Information Protection, which really does the whole shebang, if you like, as well. From a protection, and we're talking about the tools, so you've got rights management services, and as I mentioned at the beginning, that's quite a mature one. Gosh, I was doing installs of that on premise many years ago. So it's grown and evolved, and it's really a strong, stable system. Encrypted file system, again, that's a good mature one, and also pretty mature as well with the Office 365 message encryption, because again, it's coming from the Exchange on-prem or Exchange organization days. And Windows Information Protection is one of the newer ones, but so far so good. A lot of times with new cloud products or new offerings from Microsoft, they cannot be, you don't have, what's the word to be politically correct, you don't have the desired experience that you should get when you run them. So a lot of these, but it's been a pleasant experience with Windows Information Protection. I've got clients using that and loving it. Okay, let's see, what else do I want to talk about here? Yeah, it can be so, for want of a better word, messy when you're working on, you've got to cover all these devices, the apps, and all these different areas. So really, and this multiplies the hassles for, from an IT side or security side. And so really it's designed to address all that as slick and as smoothly as possible. So really, once you start, if you like, your discovery process, for want of a better term, on the project, when it comes to information protection, once you get your sort of teeth into discovery, and then of course the classification and protection, it's sort of the story opens, or the story unfolds, if you like, as to what you as an organization need to drive these various protection, or the different levels you want to protect. But keeping in mind the business process and the productivity, so you're not causing the end user base a lot of hassles, and they need to be able to do their job with as little interruption or little hassle as possible when it comes to the tools. Okay, so let's see here. Next. Yep. Okay, so that about wraps up, and I know it's a lot, and I'm trying to keep it as high level as possible. But yeah, this just it's like when somebody comes to me and says, if you're doing interviews, they're an Azure expert. It's just a fallacy. You can never be an Azure expert, because just, even if you were an incredibly versed with it, the rate of change. I mean, I have like I did have it out earlier. I had the enterprise roadmap for the products. I was looking at that for a customer yesterday. And between now and the end of the year, it was like, oh gosh, what was it? 20, I want to say 20,000, no. About 20K odd of new features, new products, items coming out before the end of the year. So it's just insane, the change. And I feel bad for the technical writers, because I know a few friends and colleagues who are technical writers who have had nervous breakdowns, because by the time they finish the document or the instructions, it's already out of date. So yeah, ask away though. Any questions that we've got, feel free.
Thanks, Steve. Feel free to come off of mute if you have a question, or use the chat.
Sure. Can be mind-boggling, I know that.
Hey, I actually have one. Thanks for the
sure.
Thanks for the great presentation, you guys.
No problem.
You had, this is kind of a little specific, but I kind of run into this at clients. But you had mentioned, kind of applying AIP to things like AutoCAD files and stuff like that.
Yes.
That's always difficult. Do you have experience? Do you have any third-party things that you would recommend? That kind of stuff. I know.
All right. I mean, the most common one, you've said there, is really the AutoCAD one, because let's say, so Westfield, the customer mine. So when I'm when I was on site there rather with them a lot, they actually, of course, design and build the shopping malls themselves. And so they had a really big, engineering department and build a design, and it was all AutoCAD. And, AutoCAD is a great industry leader of that area. And there were several, I think, I'm trying to remember, there were quite a couple of different options from third parties who had made a plugin so that AIP could reach and protect those AutoCAD documents as well. So
gotcha.
I can
something like a
what it was.
plugin that kind of traveled with the
it's exactly. So you've got all of these you've got all of these sort of software and development companies popping up, and some of them have been around for a while, because especially if the AutoCAD, for example, and making the hooks and the APIs to let whatever their specialist document be protected. Yeah.
Great. Thanks.
No problem.
There's a question here in the chat.
Yep. Let's see. How do you compare Azure versus Splunk Enterprise in general? So, okay, that's apples and oranges a little bit. So, Azure being the core, for want of a better term, the core cloud system or platform that Microsoft runs off, from Office 365 to information protection, it's all coming off Azure. Whereas Splunk Enterprise, I'm not too familiar on Splunk Enterprise. Splunk, yes, but really, so you'd compare Azure Information Protection maybe with Splunk Enterprise, but I'm not quite sure what the enterprise version of Splunk covers. Let me have a quick look in my notes here, because I've come across it before, I think. Let me do a search in my OneNote. Yeah, so I think, that's right. Okay, so Splunk is, it's a mature organization, mature product. It's actually really, really good at what it does. And they have sort of figured that out as well. In the sense of, Microsoft is really a market disruptor, for want of a better term, of the security area. And they totally approach it in a different way. And to me, it makes perfect sense. If you said to me like 5-10 years ago I was in security, I would have laughed, because it was such a dull and thankless area, and it was just so static. But now with these phenomenal cloud tools and leveraging all of this AI, you can get some amazing results. So it looks like that Splunk is sort of seeing that a little bit too, and starting to sort of unsilo some of their products. As I was mentioning, having everything siloed is really bad when it comes to security. So it looks like they're getting there. But again, they're not going to be able to do end-to-end. That's the thing. As far as I know, and I could be wrong, Microsoft is the only security vendor that can do end-to-end and the whole life cycle. Because they can reach into not only their own products, which of course is so prevalent in corporations around the world, but they're opening of arms to all the third parties as well. Hopefully that answers a little bit, but it's sort of, to me, it's sort of it supports Microsoft's approach, because if they're doing the enterprise products too, where they're all grouped together, it sort of shows you that that's really the way to go as well. And then being such a mature security organization, that it has a lot of weighting. Okay, what do we have next question? Nope, is that the last one, I think?
I think that's the last one. Anyone else? Anyone else want to come ask a question here? I think that was great, Steve. That was very thorough. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Oh, no worries at all. That is the condensed version, I tell you.
Yeah, there's a lot of really good
massive
demos.
Area. Yeah, gosh. No, my pleasure. It's good to do it. I thoroughly enjoy doing it.
Definitely. We'll reach out to you next time we want to get another security presentation going.
Yeah, of course, because it changes so fast. The next one I do will be different again.
Absolutely. Yeah. So be happy to have you back and present again.
Yeah, no, I'd love to. Oh, what do we get? Oh, okay. Yep, makes sense. Yep, no worries at all. Yeah, it does. That's what I would agree with as well. It's showing the trend when it comes to Splunk Enterprise. I will have to give that a go, see what it's doing. I've not had a customer use it yet that I've seen. So here we go, sorry, on our last one here, contact info. And I'll send a copy of the deck to you as well, so you can have this. But here's our contact info, and just drop us a line with any questions or things you'd like to know about or clarify when it comes to security, and we'd be glad to help.